Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this session today. We are gonna have a live interview with one of our students, Jayasankar. And at GMATWhiz, we always try to bring you inspiring stories. We always aspire to do that. In fact, our this year's commitment is to kind of bring you at least one such story every single week, if possible. So we're trying to bring amazing stories to you. We all of us know that round one is coming near. There's just 1 month of preparation time that is left if you want to apply take the GMAT before round one. So we are trying to focus on stories of people who have done this inspirational job of getting to their dream GMAT score in a month's time or around a month's time. And last week we did an interview with another student of ours, Priyanjali, who was able to score a 730 in just 30 days. And today we have Jayasankar with us, who has achieved this amazing rate of 720 on the GMAT in just 40 days time in his first attempt. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Jayasankar on the live stream to share his amazing insights with us. So, hello Jayasankar, how does it feel to cross that 700 mark and get to that top 5 percentile bracket in terms of getting that 720 on the GMAT? How does it feel like?
Yeah, hi Piyush. Hi everyone.
Mm.
It does feel great. So uh, I think it was a good experience for me in general, but I think it's definitely doable, and with the right apparatus, it's quite achievable.
The word that you said, doable, is something which is very, very important. And again, honestly, like I speak to 5 to 6 students every single day. Around this time of the year, their main doubt is, can I even achieve that? So that's something which is the biggest question mark, the question mark itself, the doubt whether I can do it. And as you said, it's doable. You can do it in 40 days. So Jashankar will definitely get into the specifics, exactly how you plan this 40 days, and that's gonna be the main focus of our session today. But let's start with a brief introduction about yourself. Like, let's let the users understand more about you to know you better.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working as a software developer for 4 years, and I
Okay.
was looking for a change in my career path, and that's how I chose to try try the MBA route. And then uh, my top choice was to go for an international MBA, and that's how I started preparing for the GMAT. And actually, I think for me, my technical side was quite strong, and I had a
Okay.
feeling that my verbal side would be a bit lacking.
I was just about to say that, like as a software engineer, probably which happens with most of the software engineers from India, that we have a sound quant base. So verbal is the problem area for most of us. So let's understand this 40 days. Like, how did you plan this 40 days? Like, I understand that this was your first attempt for the GMAT. So how was this 40 days planned out? Like, can you just give us a brief of the same, and then we can probably deep dive into each of these phases of your preparation. Let's call them phases for the lack of a better word. Yeah.
Okay, so coming into the GMAT, I had taken a few mocks, and it was quite clear
Okay.
that I was quite confident in my quant. And
Okay.
once I enrolled into the GMATWhiz program, I started with the verbal for the, let's say, first 20 days. And then
Okay.
later I switched to the quant section. And
Okay.
maybe in the last 10 days, it was mostly mocks.
Okay. Okay. So first 20 days, let's call it phase one. Phase one you mentioned was focused on verbal. So like
Yeah.
how did your phase one look like? Like I know you have summarized it in just like one simple word, focus, simple focus, one single focus, verbal. But what did you do in these 20 days? Like say similarly as example, like if we take the example that you took a mock test and you planned that okay, this is where I'm weak. Like what was the planning that went behind this first 20 days overall?
Okay, so I think for especially Indian students, the verbal section mostly throws a lot of ambiguity at us. And
Okay.
I think that's where GMATWiz makes it a bit more, let's say, quant-like for Indian students, and giving us a better kind of approach, how to solve each question methodically.
Okay.
And the way the GMATWiz starts giving us, or rather taking us into the course, is starting with SC. So
Okay.
once we start with SC, that's where, that's like, you can say, is a it's like a building block for the next
Rest of the
type of
areas.
questions. Yeah. So when you look at it in that logical fashion, it becomes very easy to start following the whole course prep, and slowly, one by one, you can pick up the skills that are required to solve it in a methodical fashion.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
So,
so
so
yeah.
just to take a step back, what I understand is that when you started your preparation, like the first 20 days, you started with what GMAT study plan was recommending you. So you followed the study plan to the T. Like you started with sentence correction and then
Yeah.
moved on from there. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when you log in into the system, you have an option to select what kind of a course prep you need for yourself. It is
Okay.
quite
Okay.
customizable for according to the individual's requirements. So what I
Okay.
selected was since I was quite sure that I would need help with the verbal section, I
Hmm.
naturally chose the verbal side initially,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then the system gives you a list of subjects that you need to start looking
Cover.
into. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then after each section you have kind of a quiz for which you'll be familiarized with the kind of questions that may come from that section.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So you basically stuck to the study plan, followed that study
Yeah.
plan properly. So you mentioned that sentence correction is kind of a building block for the rest of the thing. So I would like you to elaborate on this. This is a very unique thought. Most people think that they can actually do SC, CR, and RC in parallel, like or in a jumbled fashion. They can do it on alternate days. But why did you say that SC is a building block for the other areas?
So I was also one of those people who thought that we can do it in whichever fashion you need. But what
Okay.
I understood after this structured course is that the it's like you zoom out more and more from once you go from SC to CR to the RC section.
Okay.
So
Okay.
once you get the
Got it.
hang of how to clearly answer the SC questions, then you can go to the critical reasoning section. So you are
Okay.
actually building on the knowledge that you got on how to solve the SC questions, and using that, you are further developing your skills with CR and then RC. So
But
what
SC
you
is
have to
testing you on grammar and CR is testing you on altogether different thing. How are these two linked up?
Yeah, so I think that's where the concept of evolved and involved reading comes in. So once you understand that each of these sentences actually contribute to the whole uh, paragraph first, and then the whole uh, let's say the whole RC
Passage.
the
Hmm.
comprehension passage. Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's like
Okay.
a logical flow of ideas that you are trying to solve there. So, like basically coming from a quant angle, if you look at it, that's how you can solve the ambiguity which is related to the which comes as part of the verbal section.
Well, that's a very important phrase that you use. Like it is like zooming out, and I really like that thought process. So again, I knew the answers to the questions that I was asking you, but I was just trying to basically get your perspective on the same as well. So the main thing is that when you look at a critical reasoning question, as you rightly said, it's more about multiple sentences being linked to each other. So unless you understand each part, you'll not be able to zoom out to the entire argument. What many people make a mistake with is that they start reading bigger text in one go without realizing that if you don't read individual sentences well, you cannot understand the individual arguments either, basically. So that's a very well
Yeah,
pointed out thing that it's important to start with basics and go through one step at a time. And there are no shortcuts on GMAT. Those of you who are thinking that, okay, 40 days or 30 days is what I want to prepare for, I'm here to get some secret tips from Jayasankar. The only secret tip that you're going to get is structure. Structure is the most important thing. Like there is no shortcut. Basically, you have to go through the grind. You have to be focusing on the basics. That's very, very critical. I think you agree with that, Jayasankar, right?
yeah, absolutely.
So what are the important areas? So you mentioned that structure you followed, like SC, then CR, then RC. But what are the key things that change your perspective towards verbal? So following the course is one thing, like going through the course is one thing. But what eventually led to that change in your approach? And by the way, like what was your quant and verbal score in this attempt? Like if you can share with the users as well, that would be great.
Yeah, so my quant score is 50 and verbal was 38.
38. Okay, 38 is an amazing score. So, what led to this score 38? Like, what changed in your verbal approach? Let's try to talk about that as well, so that the users can also understand what is that they're looking at in terms of the approach as well.
Yeah, so I think a very common issue that which I also thought was it's not just about how well you know English. So
Okay.
GMAT has its own version of like verbal competency, and it's not just grammar. It's not just it's about how good you are in clearly conveying your points in the
Okay.
most concise manner. So all these aspects come into play, and these are all being tested in various parts of the verbal section. So I
Okay.
think having that change in mindset that okay, I know English, but it's not just about
Mhm.
knowing English. It's about being able to tackle the specific problems that GMAT is trying to pose.
Okay. Okay.
So
So,
there
so
needs to be a shift in that mindset as to what exactly is being tested for.
okay, okay. So you mentioned that it's not just about the language, it's not just about the grammar. It's about understanding what's GMAT, what is GMAT testing, like in a clear
Yeah.
fashion, in a let's say unambiguous fashion or concise fashion. But how does it translate to when you're solving the question? So let's say if I try to compare Jayasankar, who was solving a sentence correction question before, let's say, this 40 days, before the 40 days, like you were doing on your own, you were solving questions. What was your approach back then? And now in this 40 days, and more importantly, in the first 20 days, how did your approach change? So if I throw a SC question in front of you, what was the difference that you saw in both the cases?
Okay. So I think by using the system, I could finally come up with a specific way of solving of my own. But I
Okay.
think
Okay.
what happened is initially we will not have a clear idea of where to spend the time exactly,
Mm-hmm.
because time management is a huge aspect in GMAT
Mm-hmm.
entirely, but especially I think in the verbal section. And you have a lot of options. Like you can keep drilling at the question stem. You can go to the different options that are available. You can try to eliminate certain options, and then you can again go back and try to solve it using the eliminator options. But ultimately, I think what people need to understand is that it's the meaning that is being conveyed that is of utmost importance. So there may be certain questions where there are other aspects which may be not as good as maybe the most excellent way you can put it, but ultimately what you should be aiming for is the most accurate meaning that is being conveyed for. So that I think is a
Okay.
huge change in mindset that happened to me, where I started to think about what the author is actually trying to convey through this sentence or through the paragraph, etc. So that is also where the connection comes. It's not just about this concept being applied in
Grammar.
the SC section, but it also
Mm.
applies to the other sections in the GMAT as well.
True, true,
So
true. I can.
giving importance to the meaning, properly spending your time, allocating it for the various aspects required for solving the question, and maybe yeah, I think these are the things that changed for me.
No, that's very, very well said because I always tell people that in verbal, you have the right answer right in front of you. Like in quant, you have to know formulas. You have to have an understanding of how these concepts work. In verbal, the answer is right in front of you. It's hidden in the context there. If you understand the context, you get the answer. As simple as that. And that's one major shift in thought process which is required. And really glad to hear that you were able to understand that shift and actually implement it. And that is something which led to this amazing score in that shorter time period. So in this 20 days, like focused completely on verbal, what was the area in which you had the maximum struggle? Like before, let's say starting this 40 days or during this 40 days, out of SCCR and RC, where did you struggle the most?
I think it's probably RC,
RC,
because
okay.
like even with not having the mindset of looking at the meaning, I think it's SE is a bit more logical. Like you will be able to because it's very zoomed in. But the
Mhm.
more you zoom out, the more you need that connection forming from one sentence to the next and getting the bigger picture, especially when it comes to questions like the main point question. It
Mhm.
was quite a struggle for me, where connecting all the ideas and ultimately arriving at specific words which will describe the whole point, that was a bit tough for me initially.
How did you work on this particular aspect? How did you convert your weakness into your strength?
Yeah, I would say following the methods of like evolved and involved reading, where we go from one step to the next with the idea about what was being uh, talked about by the author in the previous section. So you need to keep that chain of thought running and understand what the why each sentence conveys the meaning that it does at that point. So this is also another kind of question, I think, where you are asked what is being like what is the flow of the arguments proposed by the
Hmm.
author.
Structure of the passage,
Yeah,
structure related
structure of the
questions are
passage.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all these things tie together in a good, very neat knot. Once you understand the key point that it's all about the meaning and the flow of the paragraph.
Got it, got it, got it. So what you're saying is that generally, and just to expand the thought a little more, that a lot of people what they do is they skim through the information. They focus on what is written in the passage. And what Jayasankar is telling us is that you need to focus on why is it written as well. You need to ultimately pivot that okay, this is what is done in the last sentence. This is what is happening now. This is what is done in the last para. This is happening in the current para. So you have to understand the purpose also of the author. Now, another question which is linked to this, Jayasankar, again, users can also ask their questions. I see there are around 5, 7 people who are watching this live. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm the moderator here. I'll try to post those questions at the right time to Jayasankar. But in the meantime, I'll just ask one question from a user standpoint, which I get asked a lot by students. That if you follow this thought process of involved and evolved reading that you are mentioning, where you have to focus on the purpose of the passage and the entire structure, isn't it very time taking? Don't you end up taking too much time and end up running out of time in the end?
So I think I also had the same question
Okay.
initially. That's where I think you can contrast it with my initial approach, where I was mentioning the amount of time that I was allocating to going to each question and trying to, let's say, eliminate and find the answer that way. So even in the earlier approach, I was losing time. But what happens here is the initial investment of time that you give for understanding the actual meaning of the passage conveyed by the author and what the actual structure of the whole paragraph is in one go gives you the advantage of being able to answer the upcoming questions very swiftly. So it's actually a balance that you strike between the time and the focus that you have
Accuracy.
for. Yeah.
Very well said. In
So
fact, when you skim through the
I
passage,
think
you
it's
save
when
time
you change.
initially.
Yeah, so when you change that mindset, it will be a bit daunting initially, but once you start to see the results, you will be able to understand that you're trading the right thing at the right place.
That's that's very true. In fact, that was gonna be my next question. That how did you change your mindset? Like, there's a lot of friction which comes with this. Like, it's easy to hear. Like, when you have been doing certain things in a certain way, then changing that approach altogether. And this is like very opposite of skimming. This is exactly being involved in it. So I'm pretty sure, Jasankar, you would have also initially, you might not have had the same time efficiency, right? Like when you were reading passages using this approach initially, you were probably taking longer. Was that the case, or you're able to read passages in similar time from day one?
No, not at all. Initially, I was also
Okay.
taking a lot of time. So I think this is where one help I would say from my mentor Satyam came into a lot of help for me, where he told me to. So there is a section or a feature in GMATWhiz where you can use something called quizzes, and in these quizzes you have the ability to set timer for a set number of questions. So, so we started off with let's say more than 2 minutes per question for me for each each verbal question, and then
Okay.
we were slowly bringing down that time to near 2 and then less than 2. So what happens is
Okay.
gradually you will be able to develop that skill to read in an evolved manner and yet keep
Okay.
a check on time. So ultimately it's practice, and I think with the help of these specific kind of quizzes, it will be easy for anybody to slowly but surely improve in their timing.
Got it. Got it. So you learn the right approach, you take customized quizzes focused on what is the time that you're taking, and you gradually reduce the time till the point you
Yeah,
become comfortable with the overall time.
yeah.
Great, great, great. So that's great about the phase one. How about your phase two? Like the first 20 days focused on verbal. The next 10 days you mentioned you were focusing on quant. So how did this next second phase of your journey look like?
Yeah, so for quant, I think GMAT is mostly trying to test your breadth of your knowledge rather than your depth. So obviously there will be very high level questions in quant, which in the time constraint will be pretty hard to crack. But mostly, I think it's more about having a comprehensive understanding of all the subjects that will be tested. So, what how I work with my mentor is he helped me to understand the gaps that I need to fill. And let's say I had a specific doubt about a specific section, and I could ask him which section of the course on GMATWhiz covered these topics, and he would direct me on those specific sections. So with
Okay.
this, I could fill the gap that was there for me in the quant section, and again
Okay.
get back on the whiz quiz and just practice with the timings.
Got
I
it.
think
Got
once
it.
the timing comes into the picture, it gets more difficult, but with these practice quizzes it will be easier to work with. Yeah.
So in 9 days. Okay. Okay. So in the second phase, you focus on quant, where you focus on specific areas with the help of your mentor to understand where you are weak and accordingly you work on them. And in the phase two, were you also working on verbal, or it was only quant that you spent your time on?
So it was not only quant, because I knew I had to keep working on my verbal. So it was mostly like 50-50, you can say. Yeah.
And phase three, how was your phase three? The last 10 days before the GMAT, like how was that?
Yeah, so I think that's where we have to get into that mode of examination and start taking our mocks. And GMATWhiz has, I think, 5 mocks and then a few additional mocks also. But I attempted the 5 mocks which are provided,
Okay.
because that was my time constraint at the time. And I think GMATWhiz has quite a uh, reliable mock section, because initially when I started taking the mocks, my score was close to 680. But
Okay.
slowly, so I think maybe that's because of the exam pressure and all that. But I think that is a good thing, because I was able to simulate this exam session quite well, and slowly it started improving, and my final mock score was 730. So it's
Okay.
quite a good approximation of the actual score that I got.
Okay. Okay. That's really good to know. And one good thing which you mentioned, that last 10 days you focused on the mocks. A lot of people have this thought
Yeah.
process: you have 40 days, 30 days to the GMAT. I need to take a mock every week. So why did you not do that? Why did you not think of taking a mock every week? Any specific
So
reason?
I think initially when I started the GMATWhiz course, I was quite unsure about my skills with verbal. So my main aim was to get my verbal solidified, and once I got proper accuracy in my GMATWhiz quiz section for verbal, and once I was completely covered with my covered on all bases, basically on the quant section, that's when I felt that confidence to start taking the mocks, because I knew that unless I have a good preparatory phase, I'll just be wasting my mocks.
That's a very, very simple answer, but it's really important for people to understand it. It's very simple, but many people still don't understand it. So if you are thinking of round one, guys, whosoever is listening to this, whether live or recorded later, if you're thinking of round one or any time in the next 30, 40 days to take the GMAT, don't make this mistake of taking a mock every single week. Unless your mentor tells you to do so, basically. There's a possibility that you are weak in certain areas. If you don't work on them, you will stay weak, your marks will be wasted. So it's important to work on the weak areas first, improve them, and then go with the marks. Okay, so thank you so much, Jayasankar, for telling us about the entire journey of those 40 days, how it was planned out, and getting into details of it. You want to share any other tips with students that you feel were helpful for you, or you will actually want others to ensure that they actually get to their dream score in this timeline? Like any other tips that you want to give, please share them.
I think so. I was also under the impression that maybe I will be able to do my preparation myself. But uh, what a platform like GMATWhiz would give you is a structured way of going about it. So having that help, I think, is it's a trade off, right? How well you can do it on your own, and how much you want that direction. So I think that's what I would suggest. Don't waste too much time uh, uh, trying to jumble all your resources from online when you have such services which can help you easily. And I think performance on the day of the test is also very important. So just stay calm and give your best, guys. I think all of you will ultimately get your dream score, and all the best.
And all the best to you too. And I know, like just like we had a discussion towards the test, beginning of our interview. So Vijay Shankar is taking another attempt on the GMAT, and his last mock score, GMAT was 5 score was 730, and generally the last mock of GMAT is whatever student scores, they generally get around 10 to 20 points more than the actual GMAT from there. So if you scored a 730, I know you have a potential of scoring 740, 750 on the actual test. So all the best to you too as well. Make sure that you learn from whatever small things which are required to fight your score further. Stay in touch with us, Satyam, me, whosoever you need the help for, and use the GMAT online course moving forward. And who knows, we might ask you for another interview to give us that final push, like for people who are looking at a 720 to a 740, 750 kind of a number jump. So thank you so much for taking out time today. It was really, really great to hear your thoughts on this short but sweet period that you had for your GMAT preparation, and how did you go about going with it. So thank you so much, Jashankar, for being here today.
Thank you, Piyush. Yeah.
Thank you.